To a member of the Korgis right after Tears for Fears. All around me are familiar faces. But before they got together in Bath as a duo, Roland Orzabal and Kurt Smith played in a new wave and mod revival band called Graduate, along with my very special guest. The Korgis were formed in the late 1970s by James Warren and Andy Davis after they left the band Stackridge. And very much influenced by the Beatles, the Korgis had catchy melodies and beautifully arranged songs and had hits with Everybody's Got to Learn Sometime and If I Had You, and a successful second album too called Dumb Waiters. But at the height of their fame, they split up. They reformed in the 1990s, split up again, and then in 2017 got together again for a third time. In 2021 they released a very good new album, and the Korgis are playing live in Chesham in Buckinghamshire this coming Friday at the Drawing Room, and it's the first date of a new UK tour. And I'm delighted we can talk to guitarist, keyboard player and singer John Baker. Welcome, how are you?
Hi Mike, yeah, very well, thank you.
And how do you feel about starting a brand new Korgis tour?
Oh, it's always great fun, you know, we have such a good laugh when we go out on the roads. Some great people in the band, we meet some brilliant people, we play in some lovely little venues, and this particular show, whilst it is pretty new, we've done a couple of shows so far and it's gone down really, really well because we're approaching it slightly differently, Mike. We're doing a sort of history of what we've all been involved in over the years. So it's not just about the Korgis, it's about people we've worked with and songs that have influenced us, plus of course all the great Korgis songs that people like.
Well, I was going to say the tour is called the Korgis Time Machine, so a wide selection of songs with the Korgis from 1979 onwards, but some non-Korgis material. What would that be? Stackridge, perhaps?
Yeah, there's a few Stackridge songs in there and a little bit of the sort of history of how James started with Stackridge. And then my history goes back to a band called Graduate in 79-80 before I joined the Korgis. And of course, Graduate were famous for also in the band were Roland Orzabal and Kurt Smith from Tears for Fears. So we do a little bit of a sort of homage to those days and even a little bit of Tears for Fears in there. We worked quite closely in Bath in a studio called Crescent Studios with people like Peter Gabriel and when he brought Kate Bush down. So we talk about that sort of stuff. And so it's quite an interesting little show, really. So
songs and the stories about those songs, and also the songs, as you say, that have influenced you, primarily Simon & Garfunkel and the Beatles, perhaps.
Well, yeah, there's a bit of Simon & Garfunkel, Beach Boys, Beatles in there. 10cc. People often sort of said that the Korgis sounded very much like an early incarnation of 10cc, so we pay a little bit of a homage to them as well. So, you know, it's quite varied.
And there's visual material in there too, is that right? Old videos or something?
Yeah. We go on stage with two big television screens next to us, and where the venue's got audio facilities, it's even better. But these two old TVs stand on the stage with us, and all the way through the show, we've got visuals and old videos and old footage of us going alongside the songs. So people are saying that it's just a lovely night out and that they get really entranced in all the different sort of visuals and sounds that we come up with.
It sounds amazing. So it's quite a complex show by the sound of it.
Yeah, it is. And we're very lucky that Al Steele, our guitar player, is a genius with all things technical. So he sort of tends to put all the stuff together. And it's developed over the last 4 or 5 years. But certainly I think that the show that we've got now really shows off not just the songs, not just the musicality, but the visual side of it as well, where you can add something that, you know, was an old video or an old piece of footage that was taken many years ago, and it fits seamlessly with the song. So that's great.
Well, there's a Korgis song that was released as a single, I think, in 1982, remixed by Trevor Horn. It's called Don't Look Back, but you are looking back. So let's hear this. The Korgis here on BBC Three Counties Radio from 1982 in a song called Don't Look Back. And you can see the Korgis and their Time Machine tour at the Drawing Room on Francis Yard in Chesham this coming Friday, August the 18th. Ticket details coming in a moment. We're talking to John Baker on the show. So it must have been amazing to have had Trevor Horn involved, because in a sense, what he was doing with Buggles, a studio band, and then later with Frankie Goes to Hollywood and Dollar and Yes, the Korgis were going for that studio sound using the latest technology like keyboards and synthesizers, yes?
Absolutely. And Trevor Horn, of course, using things like the Fairlight and the really, really expensive synthesizer technology, but was, at the forefront of electronic 80s music at the time, as you rightly say. And the opportunity to work with Trevor was fantastic. That comes up in the show. We pay a little bit of homage to Trevor Horn. And of course, we play Don't Look Back. Which, an interesting little story about Don't Look Back is that it wasn't a hit in England, but funnily enough, a couple of years later, I think in 84 or 85, there was a Brazilian TV show, and I can't remember what it was called, but it was like a national soap, like one of our sort of evening soaps, EastEnders, etc. And this thing went out for a number of years in Brazil, and one of the characters in the show became their sort of theme tune. So every time that person came into the show, a bit of Don't Look Back would be played. So a lot of people in South America, they know us more for Don't Look Back than they do for Everybody's Got to Learn Sometime.
So the Korgis started in the late 1970s, and they were setting out to make catchy, melodic, hooky type of pop singles. Perfect pop, perhaps, yes?
I think so. And I think it all stemmed from the fact that Andy and James, who started the Korgis, were in a band called Stackridge for many years in the 1970s. Stackridge were a folk rock band, really, signed to MCA Records in the early 70s and then later on Rocket Records. But they spent their whole life touring, and they weren't really a studio band. They were a live act. And I think doing the Korgis was a complete change from doing that sort of slogging around type of touring, and all they wanted to do was sit in the studio and create catchy little pop songs, and of course those first two Korgis hits, If I Had You, Everybody's Got to Learn Sometime, were exactly that.
They'd never played live at that time. Is that why perhaps they weren't able to maybe follow up those hit singles with other commercially successful records?
I'm almost certain that decision of not having a live act in those days was a real part of the unfortunate sort of demise of the Korgis in the mid-80s, really. We should have been out on the road. We should have been following up on that success, really. And it's been tough for us to sort of break back into the live circuit over the last 5 or 6 years because of that, really, because we've not sort of built the name enough over the years.
Do you think that James Warren in the Korgis at that time had set the band up for long-term success, or did he accept that, sometimes or quite often pop stardom is often very short-lived?
I think anyone that goes into a band, especially in your 20s or your late teens in your 20s, when you start a band, you don't look that far ahead. You're in the moment, you're producing music for the moment, you're enjoying the moment, and perhaps, it's something that we needed to have done, really. We needed to have had a longer game plan, really, in our minds in those early days. And you wouldn't be in this situation now. But, we've had some great times, and I wouldn't change a lot of it. But perhaps one of the things I would have changed is the fact that we could have been a bit more current when it came to touring, really.
Is it frustrating that Everybody's Got to Learn Sometime is the song that defines the Korgis when you've got so many others in your locker?
Well, to a certain degree, I suppose it's nice for us to be able to showcase those other great songs. But when you've got a song as good as that in your repertoire, that's yours, that you've played for all these donkeys of years, and radio still plays on a regular basis, you've got to be proud of it. And I think, it certainly defines us. It's part of who we are, and we're very proud of it, really.
Change your heart.
The Korgis and Everybody's Got to Learn Sometime. Their big hit from 1980 in the UK got to number 5. It was also, though, a top 10 hit in many, many European countries, including 3, I think, where it was number 1. It was also a top 20 hit in America and Australia, wasn't it?
It certainly was, yeah, incredible success. I mean, France, it was number 1 for 6 weeks. And as you say, going top 20 in America. But this silly notion that we didn't tour at the time or throughout the 80s to back that up was, a big mistake, really, because even America, I think, the sort of music that we've done over the years would have suited the American market very much, really.
The first version of the Korgis then split up, and James Warren issued some solo albums, and then you got back together again, I think, for the album in 1992, This World's for Everyone. Did you start to play live then, after that came out?
Do you know, we did, yeah. We did a very small tour, a laid-back tour, only sort of places like Bristol, a gig in Oxford, a gig in London, and a couple of others. But, it just didn't gel that well, to be honest. The one good thing that came out of that is we met Al Steele, who's our current guitar player, and we got to know Al in those days, and we've kept in touch with him ever since. So when we restarted the Korgis again back in 2016-17 and decided to do it properly and go out on the road, Al was part of those plans. So, but yeah, we didn't really capitalise on it even after This World's for Everyone, which we should have done.
The Korgis also formed as a trio to release an unplugged album. They recorded an album called Folk and Pop Classics, which was covers, and re-recorded some early Korgis material. But as you say, Al Steele became a member of the band on lead guitar. And then during lockdown, you wrote this album, Kartoon World, that came out in 2021. The first original material of the Korgis for almost 30 years. It was a concept album about the power of love, with a storyline spanning half a century from 1980 to 2030. And Al wrote most of the lyrics, I think, because James said he didn't really fancy doing that in lockdown, right?
Yeah, I think me and Al, between us, wrote quite a lot of the lyrics on that album. And the three of us, did the melodies. And it was done basically via a computer. We'd send ideas around to each other, and one of us would add something and then send it back, and then somebody else would add something. And it worked really, really well. A lot of music was done in that way, and a lot of it has turned out really, really well. It's a very productive time. It was a very sort of artistic, productive time, I think, lockdown. And we're really proud of that album. It's great.
Well, I think there's a lot going on in it, and a wide range of musical styles. Really, really good. This was the lead single that came out, Bringing Back the Spirit of Love.
We're gonna start a revolution.
The Korgis from their 2021 album, Kartoon World, and a song called Bringing Back the Spirit of Love. And the Korgis are playing live this coming Friday, the 18th of August, at the Drawing Room in Chesham. And my guest is John Baker, guitarist, keyboard player and vocalist with the band. That was a pretty ambitious album to make, and then you toured it last year, I think. How did that go?
That was great. We had an 8-piece band out on the road promoting that album, and we had so much fun. We had 3 backing singers, and they were young, enthusiastic, and great fun. And it was just a joy to be singing those songs, really. It was real good fun.
Do you think you've got a fan base that does know the wide repertoire that the Korgis have produced, not just the hit singles?
Yeah, to a certain degree. I think, we're still in the process of adding fans and building a fan base. But I think there's a core group of people out there that absolutely buys and downloads everything that we do, which is lovely to have. Without those people, it would make it very difficult, really.
Still a bit tricky to get radio airplay, it seems to me, not just for the Korgis, but other acts that have been around 40, 50 years because of the changes.
It's almost impossible, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because of the changes in how radio stations format their playlists and the changes in music that becomes more dominant, I guess. We've got an anniversary of hip-hop, I think, this week, and then obviously dance music and quite a lot of female musicians, all a bit sounding the same, it seems to me.
I totally agree, and it's a shame, really. Thank God for programs like yours and some of the old Radio 1 DJs that have gone on to other shows and things like that still promote bands of that era, really. Mike Reed is a fantastic supporter of ours, and he's got a thing called the Heritage Chart. People like ourselves and all sorts of people, Pete Cox from Go West and Katrina from Katrina and the Waves, currently in the top 5, top 6 of that chart at the moment. Those are the sort of things that we have to rely on to get our stuff out there and played. But, thank God for that, really.
James is in his 70s. He's been going 50-odd years. It's quite extraordinary to look back that far, isn't it? But this is all music that I grew up with and love. So to be able to talk to you, 43 years after If I Had You is extraordinary. How's it for you guys? I mean, or do you not look back in that way?
It's mad. We did a gig a few weeks ago, and I remember vividly at the point where I was saying where I first met James, and it even took me aback on stage. I actually said, I met this guy well over 40 years ago in the lovely city of Bath, and we've been producing music ever since. And it just feels ridiculous, doesn't it, to think of time in that way.
And James was in Stackridge, as we mentioned, and that band played the very first Glastonbury Festival back in the day in front of about 200 people. And the third Stackridge album was produced by one George Martin, and the band supported Elton John and the Eagles at Wembley in 1974.
It's mad, isn't it? It's mad.
Has it been an effort to keep it all going, or do you just do what comes naturally in terms of not only performing, but also in terms of writing new songs?
The bit that's not difficult or a hassle at all is writing. I mean, I think, whatever age you are, if you're a musician and you like writing songs and you like producing music, then, you could do that at any age, really. I think the bit that gets a little bit tiring sometimes is touring, especially for a band of our sort of stature, where we're not being flown around the world in private jets, etc. We're trudging up and down the motorway and staying in little hotels. And I suppose as you get older, that bit will become a bit of a nightmare. But at the moment, we're still enjoying it.
And the Korgis have a new single out right now, and it's called Oppenheimer, brackets, Stuck in This Moment. Well, I thought you might have been commissioned to write a song for the epic film of Oppenheimer, but apparently no.
Funnily enough, it is a coincidence. Not many people believe it, but it is a coincidence that actually, funnily enough, we had this song that Al and James and another guy were working on called Stuck in This Moment. But the lyrically, it was about Robert Oppenheimer. And suddenly we found out that there was going to be this blockbuster Hollywood film coming out of the same name. So, of course, we did time our release to be around about the same time as the film. It makes sense to do that. But it was pure coincidence, yeah.
You didn't know the film was being made at all?
No, not at that point, no.
Was it a difficult subject to write a song about then?
I think once you get going on a subject, to have a story which is that interesting, lots of words come fairly easily to us. And it is great to have a subject to delve into, to write a song. Those sort of things come very easily. So no, Al wrote most of those lyrics and they came off the tongue fairly easy for him.
And I love the melody. It's not sort of overproduced. It's not stacked with lots of keyboards. It's sort of dominated by an acoustic guitar, isn't it?
Yeah, it's old-fashioned in a way. It's quite refreshing to hear a single, that somebody's prepared to put out a single which is not full of drums and bass. It's just very acoustic and it's very laid back, yeah.
John Baker has been my guest here on BBC Three Counties Radio, one of the 5 members of the Korgis, and their brand new tour, the Korgis Time Machine, opens next Friday locally at the Drawing Room, Francis Yard in Chesham. That's Friday, August the 18th. Now, you pay just £5 online for a ticket, and then you pay what extra you might want to give on the night. It's entirely up to you. And you can book the tickets on this website, the-drawingroom.co.uk, the-drawingroom.co.uk, or on the Korgis website, thekorgis.com, and you'll find more information about the band and also all the other dates on that tour. John, I wish you well with it and all future Korgis projects. Been fantastic to have you on the show. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mike. That's really kind of you. All the best.
I think that's absolutely terrific. It's the brand new single from the Korgis here on BBC Three Counties Radio, Oppenheimer, Stuck in This Moment. So well constructed, so melodic, so well arranged and played, and extraordinary lyrics too about the maker of the atom bomb. I hope you enjoyed hearing that. And the Korgis are a 5-piece featuring my guest John Baker on guitars and keys and backing vocals, James Warren on guitar and bass and vocals, lead guitarist is Al Steele, Paul Smith is the drummer, and live this week you will see them with Danielle Nichols on guitar and vocals. The Drawing Room in Chesham this Friday night, the 18th of August. Their website to book is the-drawingroom.co.uk, and I think certainly if you've been listening to the whole of that feature, you will have heard the influence very much of the Beatles on the Korgis, especially on that track we played, Bringing Back the Spirit of Love. Very like the Beatles in their psychedelic era, a bit like the Tears for Fears classic as well, Sowing the Seeds of Love. And I do recommend that album of 2 years ago by the Korgis, Kartoon World. It's a body of music seamlessly spanning the 50-year period from 1980 to 2030. And it's got a message. It's a blinding realization that the world is heading for a colossal fall. But the power of love and not technology will be the one one undisputable answer. So there you go. Recommend the Korgis. Loved all their older stuff as well, which I was discovering. They actually wrote a song. Well, I think it was originally recorded by Stackridge and then re-recorded by the Korgis, called Sometime of the Beatles, I think. Something like that. I better look that up. Anyway, yeah, check out the Korgis and their greatest hits. It's a fantastic album.